This is your last call for My Wife the Dietitian. The show is just about to start.
Come on, let's go. Hurry up.
I'm trying. I can't get my shoe on.
Welcome to My Wife the Dietitian, a fun weekly podcast about nutrition and healthy lifestyle. I'm Rob, and together with my wife Sandra, we invite you to join us on this informative and entertaining journey through the complex world of healthy eating.
Join us each week as we strive to help you with transforming your overall health and relationship with food through up-to-date, evidence-based nutrition information. This week, we are interviewing dietitian Jen Hernandez, all about chronic kidney disease, otherwise known as CKD, plus some differences between gourmet salts and sodium-free salt substitutes.
As a dietitian, we're always about how to include food, and these handouts are don't eat this, don't eat that, don't eat this, don't eat that. I mean, so many foods are demonized in the renal diet. I had a client just the other day talk about adding bananas back into her diet after 3 years of not eating bananas because she thought she couldn't have them. Yeah. And oh my gosh, nothing happened. she continued on with life and her kidneys are fine. And she was able to enjoy more food, and to have that weight come off of a person's shoulders is really, really helpful.
Stay with us.
Welcome to My Wife the Dietitian. Hello, Sandra.
Hey, Rob.
How's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Good.
What's happening today?
Oh, we get to talk to Jen Hernandez.
Yeah, baby. Yeah.
Who's a dietitian for plant-powered kidneys. It's her business, and she has a team of dietitians who support patients all over the United States for people that have kidney disease.
Wow. Sounds like a big deal.
Yeah, she's a wonderful spokesperson for her company, and we're going to talk all about gourmet salts and salt substitutes, and also just kidney disease in general.
All right. Sounds like it'll be a good one.
Yes, it will be. We're here with dietitian Jen Hernandez from Plant Powered Kidneys. Hi, Jen. How are you today?
Hi, Sandra. I am so good. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast. I was just listening to one of the past episodes, and I love what you guys do and what you share. So I'm very honored to be a part of what you all do. And hi, Rob.
Oh, hello, Jen. Thanks for joining us today.
I just listened to, I've been listening to you on other podcasts like the Unconventional Dietitian with Erica Juleson and the Leverage Practice with Stephanie Claremont. And I just thought, I got to talk to Jen, because this is like all the stuff you're doing for the public and helping people with kidney disease is just amazing. Your blog is so comprehensive. You have so much information. You have courses. You are just supporting people all over the world, because you move a lot too with your husband is in the military, eh?
Yes. So we definitely go a few places. I've lived in, I started in Arizona, went to Texas, then went to California, and then we were very, very fortunate to be in Hawaii for a few years. Nice. And we are now in Kentucky, and we are looking to move again in the next couple of months. So it is always changing, which is exciting. And there's a lot of things that we get to experience, but it's also definitely presented some challenges in building a private practice and building an online business. But I am so fortunate. I've been able to do what I've done for these past, 5 years now.
Oh, totally. And prior to starting, you worked in kidney dialysis. Is that right? And you learned a lot of you got your skills and knowledge from that, and then switched over to entrepreneurship and helping people online anywhere virtually. So that's incredible. So who do you help? Like, what type of people, and what are your services?
Well, we really like to focus on early stage kidney disease, although I have worked with clients from stage 1 through transplant. And it's always about what we can do to protect the kidney function that a person has. So whatever their GFR, their glomerular filtration rate is, whatever their stage of kidney disease is, we look at what we can do to protect that. And we really focus, as a dietitian, we focus on the diet. We focus on the foods that they should be including. I am such a fan of, how can we get more food on the plate? How can we get more variety and clear up some of the old ideas of the old renal diet so that people can enjoy more of their foods? And so we do this with private clients. I do have a team of dietitians that works one-on-one with individuals in the United States. And then I have a few clients right now as well for one-on-one. And then we have our plant-powered kidneys course, which is really meant for those early stage when you first learn about, I have kidney disease and no one's really telling me what to do. They say, just keep doing what you're doing. That's what really the course is intended for, is those early stage. I just found out, how do I protect this? And we have a lot of free, and we have a lot of free content. Like you mentioned, the blog, which is like a big part of what I love to do, and sharing more information with more people. We have a Facebook group. And then, of course, we're on Facebook and Instagram and a little bit on YouTube and even Pinterest.
Nice. That's so awesome. And when you said the old renal diet, just for Rob and the listeners.
I was going to ask that too. I had written it down, old diet ? We should go over what the difference is between the old and the new.
Yeah, the old renal diet. And this was even something that I was taught in dialysis and even in like the early CKD education. It is a very restrictive diet. So we think low potassium, low sodium, low phosphorus, a lot of these low nutrients, because the kidneys are responsible for maintaining those. And the theory was, well, if the kidneys are damaged, they can't take care of these things. We really need to control those levels because the kidneys can't help manage that. So following this restrictive diet led into all of these handouts, these really ugly, poor, just foods to avoid. Oh my gosh, it just breaks my heart, because as a dietitian, we're always about how to include food. And these handouts are, don't eat this, don't eat that, don't eat this, don't eat that. I mean, so many foods are demonized in the renal diet. I had a client just the other day talk about adding bananas back into her diet after 3 years of not eating bananas because she thought she couldn't have them. Yeah. And oh my gosh, nothing happened. she continued on with life and her kidneys are fine. And she was able to enjoy more food, and to have that weight come off of a person's shoulders is really, really helpful. But anyway, the whole thing about this is looking at nutrients, specifically potassium and phosphorus are like the really big ones, to see that they're not so impacted. Like a low phosphorus diet, a low potassium diet, what we used to think of as, 2,000 milligrams a day or something, doesn't actually protect kidney function. In fact, it can make it harder to protect kidney function because potassium has such an important role in the body. And like 98% of Americans don't get enough potassium anyway. So for someone to go from not eating enough potassium to start with, then to having this food fear, this nutrient fear of, I can't have potassium, it just creates so much restriction. And we see people having a lot of issues just getting enough to eat.
Yes.
So it's really about switching that idea and looking at the research that shows the potassium we eat in our body, the potassium we eat and put in our body does not reflect the serum potassium levels we see on our labs.
Oh, interesting.
And that's something that like a lot of people don't think about because, for one, potassium isn't really a big thing until you learn about kidney disease. And then it's all you hear about is watching out for potassium. But really understanding more about how potassium can actually help and how to include potassium in the diet so that it actually does what it's supposed to do, which is help kidneys and protect the body and take care of our muscles and take care of our blood pressure. So that's a big part of going from this old renal diet that's just so restrictive into this new renal diet of actually, yes, you should be having more fruits and vegetables in your diet because that is going to protect your kidney function.
Awesome. Yeah, that totally makes sense.
It always comes down to more fruit and vegetables, it seems, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And we talk with a lot of people about going from literally like 1 or 2 servings of vegetables a day to get them to like, the kind of the old idea of 5 a day to really like 8 to 10 per day and getting them to have more of those nutrients in the diet. It's just, you both know how important fruits and vegetables are, and just imagining going into that type of diet is so enjoyable, and the colors and the nutrients and how good you feel from eating those foods.
Yeah, for sure.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I read an article on your website and it really hit home because I get this question from clients a lot and the public about like gourmet salts, like different, the Himalayan and sea salt. And so just wondering, can you explain some of the most common types of salt, and is one better than others for health and for kidneys?
Yeah, it is a really good question. And I think it is important to look at salt about, adding it into the diet, because that's another nutrient that it's not a no sodium diet, it's a low sodium diet. And we still do want to include salt in the diet. So having table salt or sea salt, or we'll talk about that in a second, having those on hand is definitely a part of a healthy diet that can be enjoyed and make food even more enjoyable in many cases. So the different types of salts most commonly we hear about and see there's table salt, which is like the regular salt you'll see in the grocery store. It's iodized, so it does provide this micronutrient that, it's not typically a deficiency for us, but in some cases, like a totally vegan diet, it might be helpful to include that. There's also sea salt, which is, that's been trending for quite a while now. Sea salt is essentially like table salt, but it's a little less processed in that it has more of the natural minerals that are found from salt. So that sea salt is kind of getting its big thing right now, and everyone likes to gravitate towards that, which can be totally acceptable. Definitely not a problem because it does have more of those micronutrients. There's also, let me see, there's honestly so many. There's the pink Himalayan salt that you mentioned. And that one is quite trendy as well. Everyone thinks that it's, such a great option, which these different salts, the table salt, the sea salt, the pink Himalayan salt, they do show changes in sodium per teaspoon. But the thing that people don't necessarily know is that per gram, per weight, if you were to put them on a food scale, they would actually have very comparable sodium amounts. And the reason that some of these different salts have different sodium content is because of typically the crystal of the salt can be bigger or smaller. And if you think about like just visually the grains of salt that you would fit into a teaspoon compared to the bigger, flakier chunks of sea salt, there's going to be less volume that fits into a teaspoon compared to something that's fine like table salt.
Right. Oh, okay. So then people would maybe, if they're going to use some of these, like the sea salt or the Himalayan salt, they might use a little bit less in, like you'd think they would, than table salt, because it's just flakier and a bigger chunks.
Yes, absolutely. And especially if you're doing something like seasoning food at the end, right before you eat your meal, having something that you can actually visually see can also help with that as well, because you see where you're putting it. And that can make a difference. So there's a lot of like recipes. I think of the recipe with the peanut butter or nut butter dates that have been kind of going on for a little while too. And they top it with flaky sea salt, and you see the sea salt on top of the date. And that just gives another visualization of, oh, there's a little bit of salt on here and you don't need that much. So compared to something like table salt that people might be a little heavy handed on, where they're not seeing the salt. Right. That can impact how much they put on there, because they're going to wait until they taste it and they keep tasting it, adding more salt. And that might be a little bit higher if they're going by a visual.
Right.
True.
Oh, okay.
I didn't realize there was so much to know about salt.
You're telling me.
Seasoning salt, right? Holy.
I think, we look into some of this stuff and we're like, oh, how can I do like a whole article about, actually, you know what? There's a lot of things to cover about this. So, I think all these nutrients.
And there's a lot of kind of misinformation out there too about, like you can use these gourmet salts and they won't affect your kidneys like table salt. And it's like, well, it's all sodium. And I mean, I think where we get a lot of our sodium is in the ultra processed foods, like the packaged foods. And so cooking more often in your kitchen and making food from scratch and adding some salt, that's not as much of a problem as actually eating the ultra processed foods that are like highly, they have a lot of sodium in the content. So I often make that distinction with people. But the actual like different types of like gourmet salts, it's so interesting to hear, just like because their crystals are, bigger or smaller or flakier, that it impacts how much people will put on just because you can visually see it. That's so interesting.
Yeah. And I think another thing too, when people hear about these different gourmet salts, like a couple others are fleur de sal, which is flower of the salt in French. There's a Celtic salt. There's Kalanamic, which is Indian black salt. And that one's actually really, really unique, really cool. Hawaiian salt, truffle salt. There's a new one called green salt made from Salicornia. And so, yeah, all these different ones. The thing is when people hear about these trending salts, they kind of go heavy handed with them. And they think that, oh, because it's, it says it's going to be lower in sodium, that they go and they kind of go overboard. And that happens with a lot of foods, I feel, in general, when people
Like
hear that it's good for you.
The health halo kind of thing, like where people think, oh, it's healthy, I need more of it.
Yeah.
Exactly. I get that a lot from like pink Himalayan salt, that people think, oh, I'm going to do this because this one's better for you. And say, okay, but if you're putting more of that on, it's not necessarily going to help anything. Like, sure, it gives you maybe some more of those micronutrients that we're looking into, but there's other foods that actually provide those along with other nutrients and don't come along with the sodium. So I'd rather look into doing things like that compared to just finding a salt that you feel more comfortable being heavy-handed with.
Exactly. True. I totally agree with that too. Makes sense.
Hey, Jen, I've got a couple questions for you. Okay. First of all, just to clarify something for me and probably other people too. We had a guest on a few weeks ago and we were talking about kidney stones, and just wondered if you could sort of explain maybe the difference or how kidney stones are related to kidney disease. Is there a relationship, or you know where I'm going with that?
Well, I did. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I heard your podcast with Melanie, and Melanie is a dear friend and an incredible dietitian. And I'm just so honored that I am very blessed to be able to just text her randomly, and I love her to death. She's fantastic. And
love it.
Yeah. There is a very interesting relationship with kidney stones and CKD, in that kind of going off what Melanie said, that, people with kidney stones can be diagnosed with kidney disease. If their nephrologist is looking into it, saying, okay, this is kidney damage, we have to really look into what's going on and causing these stones. And then there's people with kidney disease that will never have kidney stones. Right. So they have some overlap, but it's never a guarantee that if you get one, you'll get the other.
Gotcha.
And I think another thing with that is people with kidney disease who do or have a higher potential to develop kidney stones is going back into that over restriction of foods and not getting those nutrients, like the potassium, or getting too much salt, or not getting enough calcium, things like that just set off this imbalance that creates this perfect storm for creating a kidney stone. And so I do think it's really important that people know that they are connected, but also understand that just because there is one present, it doesn't automatically mean, like, somebody with a kidney stone doesn't necessarily need to follow a renal diet per se. And someone on a renal diet doesn't need to be following certain kidney stone restrictions. Like a big one that's been trending is oxalates. And I've been getting a lot of this on social media that, oh, if I have kidney disease, I can't have foods that are high in oxalates. And they start to target, and poor spinach, poor almonds, they're just getting such a bad rap right now because of their oxalate content. But it goes back to understanding the science behind it and how the oxalates are not going to be impacting somebody with CKD the same way. At least that's not what research is showing us right now. And this could very much change in the future, but we need to acknowledge what has been studied, and not just these myths or these very strange connections, I would say.
Yeah, they're like assumptions, right? And yeah, there's a lot of that. I mean, there's so much misinformation online these days that it's confusing for people. And fair enough that someone thinks that something that's with the oxalates that are more associated with kidney stones, right? They would think that that's also related to kidney disease because it's both kidney stuff. And yeah, I mean, I get it. But yeah, we need to be a bit more specific with what information we're following, I guess.
Absolutely.
Totally. The other thing I wanted to ask is, when we talk about sodium and potassium and calcium and phosphorus and all the minerals, fluid is not necessarily a mineral, but it is important in all kidney issues. Is that right?
Mhm.
Like just
Yeah,
getting enough and
absolutely.
then not too much and all that.
Yeah. Yeah. People they can also get really concerned about fluid, just like they get really concerned about salt. And it's really important to understand that, we need to stay really well hydrated. And even with earlier stages of kidney disease or up until the point when your healthcare provider specifically tells you you need to be on a fluid restriction, and this is how much that restriction is, you should not be restricting your fluids, because the fluids are part of that roadway that gives the kidneys what they need to filter and what they need to eliminate the toxins, the waste, the things that our body doesn't need. And
I
so
love that. I
that
love your
includes.
language too. Sorry. I love when you said it's the roadway. Like it's like you think of a stream or like
Mhm.
something that's moving, the fluid is moving and it's moving through our body, it's moving through our kidneys and it helps the kidneys work. So I love that language because you talk to patients and clients all the time and you're just so, you've got a good way to explain that. And I think I love that because it's so visual.
Yeah, that's
Oh,
helpful.
thank you. I'm such a visual person. I think it really, for me to help, I always use something that I'm thinking, okay, how would this look like in, a different setting or like non-nutritional? And that definitely helps give people
Yeah.
an idea of how important it is. Because if you imagine something like a river or a stream that doesn't have any water, it's like, well, how is it going to move anything through? And it just totally shuts it down.
My
Right.
brain kind of thought of my gutters that are jammed full of leaves, and I mean that's how you clean them. You stick the hose in, you get some liquid flowing through there, and everything flushes out, right? So it's kind
Yeah,
of the same sort of
exactly.
thing.
Yeah, exactly. But then also to say, there's the ideas of like the kidney detoxes and the kidney flushes and things like that, because that's what came to my mind when you mentioned that. It's like those things are very, very not helpful and very,
Yeah,
very limitedly recommended for people
yeah,
because they include a lot of weird things. But
I'm
when you
sure.
said
Yeah,
flushes, that's where my mind went.
I'm thinking flush with water, not
Yes,
not some
yes,
special off the shelf kind of flush.
absolutely.
Next question for you, Jen, is how can people prevent kidney disease? And I'm guessing, I mean, it's obviously lifestyle and diet, but are there specific things within those realms that people can do to, prevent getting it in the first place?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that we had mentioned earlier, we talked about was potassium.
Right.
And again, most people don't get enough potassium, but it is so incredibly helpful to blood pressure that it really should be a big focus. So, looking at how much potassium you're getting can be really, really helpful. And just doing a food track, a food journal, something like that to give you an idea of how much potassium you're getting in can be really insightful. We do food journals with our clients, but I don't think they need to be done all the time, but just like a couple days here and there to get an idea of what your normal intake is providing you.
Right.
I think that can be really, really insightful, especially right before you get lab draws, because you need to have a medical diagnosis from a physician for kidney disease. And so you want to provide them with that information leading up to that lab draw. And then when you discuss your labs, to show what your food intake is looking like, because that's going to show what those lab results are coming out to be. It's going to show that connection.
Right.
So I think that's really, really helpful, especially for those who have a family history of kidney disease. If you have a family history of hypertension, diabetes, those are the top two causes of kidney disease. And even just a family history of that is something to be very aware of. Just totally seared into my brains. One of my hardest memories in dialysis was when I met a new patient who was starting dialysis, and he was so chill. And I asked him how he was coping with this. And he said, "Oh, I knew this was going to happen for a long time. My mom is over there, my aunt's across the room, and this was my destiny. Like this was bound to happen."
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah,
no.
and he was so calm about it because he just knew, like he just kind of accepted this idea that his kidneys were going to fail. And he was a young gentleman. It really showed me how, in some cases people, they know about it and they just assume that their kidneys are going to fail. But again, if you know your family history,
They think they can't do anything about it. Is that what you mean? Like they can't change it? It's
well,
it's a destiny?
honestly, there's quite a bit of the medical field that still holds the idea that diet won't make a difference,
Really?
even though it's been researched and shown time and time again. They say, and I hear this from clients and students all the time, oh, my doctor says I can do whatever I want, I can eat whatever I want. And then 6 months later, their doctor is hounding them. Your labs are horrible. What have you been doing? What have you been eating? And it's like, well, you said I didn't have to make any changes. You said I could eat whatever I wanted. And that's kind of where we like to step in beforehand to say, let's be a little more engaged in what's going on. Let's
Yeah,
not
right.
say it doesn't matter.
Holy,
Totally.
that's crazy.
Oh
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
I'm just thinking back in earlier part of my career when one of the doctors I worked with told the patients to go to McDonald's 3 times a day. It didn't matter. Diet, there's no consequence at all. And then of course I had like my door was like banged down with the wives and with the patients and going, what is this right? We can just like go to McDonald's 3 times a day. My husband has diabetes. How can that be right? So it's like, had to do a lot of repair work after that.
Yeah, right.
Oh, I can only imagine. Yeah. I definitely hear that a lot too. And we do try to we want to strike a balance between enjoying your food and getting that variety and still fitting in things of life like eating out or enjoying celebrations and holidays and things like that. But we don't want to have the mindset of it doesn't matter. And just kind of, I can't even imagine. I don't have kidney disease, but to think that I would hear that I have, let's say, stage 3 kidney disease, and my doctor says, it's fine. We'll just see how it goes in 6 months. I'm like, really? Like that's it. That's all we're going to do is just wait and see. I mean, I don't know. That just creates a lot of anxiety for me.
Oh, totally. Because there is like, you can actually, there's modifiable risks. Like you can control what goes into your body and you could possibly help prevent the next stage of kidney, or you can help, lengthen the time between needing a transplant or needing dialysis. Is that not right?
Oh my gosh, absolutely. I have several clients right now who've been able to improve their kidney function. They've had an increase in their GFR. They've been able to see that their potassium level stays the same, even when they double their potassium intake, and they have better blood pressure. They actually come off of blood pressure medications by the physician. Their doctor says, your blood pressure looks great. You don't need medication anymore, all from changing their diet. And that's what we focus on. But people don't always hear these types of stories. And so they don't believe that that could be possible. They hear about, dialysis clinics are popping up like McDonald's, honestly. And the wait list for transplant is years and years. And that's what we hear about. And that's what we see day to day. But, people seeing that there is a possibility to protect kidney function in whatever stage and situation is absolutely possible.
Oh,
that's good to hear.
That's encouraging and hopeful for people that have this or that might be predestined as they think in their mind because of family history. But it's like there is some modifiable risk. Like you can control the environment to some degree with your diet and exercise and lifestyle and what you're eating, and getting the right information from someone like you who has all these courses online, and that you can actually help direct people like what to do if you have early stage kidney disease or even prevention. These things are so important for long-term health and, the quality of life with people that are on kidney dialysis 3 times a week for years or on a transplant waiting list. Like I see this and it's so detrimental to their health, like just to their quality of life, their day-to-day living, because your whole life is focused around going to the clinic, having your dialysis. It drains you. Like just, I don't know, what are some of the things you've seen with your clients in dialysis, like when you used to work in a clinic?
Yeah, it's hard. It's really, really hard. And I think it is a life-sustaining treatment, 100%. It is meant for people who are at end-stage kidney failure. And it's luckily, nephrology is also moving more towards the symptom-based approach rather than the lab-based approach, where somebody can qualify for kidney dialysis with a GFR below 10. And now they're looking at, okay, if the GFR is below 10 and a patient is feeling nauseous, vomiting all the time, and having just a lot of issues, and their labs are through the roof, uncontrolled, then let's talk about dialysis options. But not just, oh, you have a GFR of 9, you need to be on dialysis right now. I don't care that you feel fine. I don't care. That was the old way of doing it. And so hopefully now we're seeing people coming into it to see it as more of a treatment, because before some people would say, oh, I had no idea. They would come in and it would be their initial treatment. They'd say, I have no idea that I had kidney disease until I went to the hospital, or I went to the doctor, and the doctor said, you need to go to the hospital right now. And they have a CVC, a central venous catheter, put into their neck for emergency dialysis.
Wow.
And they're just like, I had no idea. And so that was probably one of the hardest things to hear, is when somebody was totally like just deer in headlights kind of a look, had no idea that it was coming. And then they're thrown into this medical area that is very much the in-center treatment. To me, it's very intense. Yeah. It's a lot of auditory. It's a lot to take in for your senses. I mean, you see all these machines, you're hearing the beeping all the time. You're seeing all of these like syringes and all these needles, and it's a lot.
And the smell. And there's a smell.
And there's always smells.
Yeah. I'm just thinking of all the senses, like your visual, like everything, like just like you said, sensory overload for people that didn't had no idea even about dialysis, or no idea even about kidney health, or, just like you said, deer in the headlights. And all of a sudden they're in a dialysis clinic and they're thinking, oh my God, I have to do this for the rest of my life. Wow. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I mean, diet is so important, and it's got to be emphasized that there is some control we can take with what we consume and what fuel we put in our body, because it can impact our kidneys, and it can impact our quality of life and our longevity, and how things turn out. So it's the earlier we get started with eating, improving our diet, one step at a time, I think it really makes a difference in all areas.
Absolutely.
Can we just touch on maybe some particular foods? I know you mentioned like potassium-rich foods, but can we just make sort of a quick list of some, or give people some ideas of what those foods might be?
Sure, absolutely. I always go to those old foods to avoid handout, and the things that people are usually told to avoid. Like right away, I had a patient say, oh, well, my doctor said because I have kidney disease, I can't eat potatoes anymore because potatoes are high in potassium. And she's like, I don't even like potatoes. I don't even eat potatoes. I don't know why I don't know why this was recommended to me, but potatoes are high in potassium. And so that's an example of something that is quite high in potassium. But double boiling, which is a studied and proven method of reducing potassium, it actually can still be included. Other high potassium foods would be tomatoes, avocados, bananas. Nuts can be quite high in potassium, especially if you're not paying attention to portion, because a portion of nuts is quite small. Right. Another whole area of high potassium food are meats, animal meats. They can actually be quite high in potassium. And the concern about animal meats, which I'm sure you know from the name Plant Powered Kidneys, we really promote a plant-based diet. It's not to say you can't have animal meats, but when somebody talks about being careful with potassium, they don't think about animal meats having potassium, but they do. Just like our bodies have potassium in them, animal meat has potassium in that as well. And this is another thing from dialysis. We used to talk about, a lot of protein, because the dialysis will take some protein through that process of cleaning the blood. But then we would say, eat more protein, and not realizing that potassium is also going to be a factor into their daily potassium intake. So meats, for sure, don't forget that those also contain potassium. Dairy products are usually moderate in potassium, but some of them can be higher. And then a whole other realm to be careful of when it comes to potassium in the diet is actually potassium additives. And these are things that you find on the ingredient list, but potassium additives are being looked at much more closely now because they can be highly absorbed. And so when people do have to be careful with potassium, that's the number one thing I look at is, okay, we need to start reading ingredient lists. We need to look at the labels and see how much potassium you're getting from additives, because that can potentially be something to be more cautious with rather than avoiding something like your avocado toast.
Right. Which is like a whole food kind of thing. But if you're looking at additives in products, then that's like something that's added in the process of making the food in the factory and in the food production. Yeah. Okay. And I'm just thinking, when you said the potassium additives, is there like the salt, like the new salt or the potassium salt? That is one that, do you talk about with your clients at all? Like, because that's a potassium, something that you shake on your food. And if someone has to be on low salt, they might pick that up instead. But I think there's some, I don't know, what is your view on those ones?
I am very hesitant about those. While I do want people to get more potassium, and what you were talking about, like new salt or those salt substitutes, many of them are using potassium chloride instead of sodium chloride. So therefore it's sodium free because they're replacing that formula with potassium. But if somebody is having kidney function issues and potentially potassium balance issues, putting something into the diet like a salt substitute that is based with potassium chloride, I just get a little antsy about how much they're using it because it's so high in potassium. Like a quarter teaspoon can be over 500 milligrams of potassium in some cases.
Oh, wow.
And so that can be quite high. Yeah. And again, going back to that, we were talking about people just kind of being liberal and just shaking it on everything. If somebody's thinking, oh, this doesn't have any sodium in it, and they're adding more of it, then that's kind of where I just get a little like, well, maybe we just actually look at incorporating regular table salt, sea salt, whatever you like. Let's look at incorporating that in a nice, easy way, and not being so heavy-handed with something like a salt substitute. So I know some patients might have salt substitutes recommended if they have a very low potassium level, if they have a hard time keeping potassium in. So in some cases, maybe, but for CKD, I'm generally just I'm not comfortable with recommending them.
Totally. No, that makes a lot of sense. That's good clarification. Thank you so much. Because I'm always very hesitant when I see people using those on their dining room table. They have the new salt instead of like any other table salt, and it's like, oh, that's potassium chloride, not sodium. So yeah, good. Well, that's so much information. Rob, do you have any other last minute questions that you had for Jen?
I do, actually. I do have a last minute question.
Perfect.
Yeah. What about supplements? I know like it's kind of like a trend now that, people pop pills for everything these days. And, people hear, oh, I need more potassium. I'll just grab a vitamin bottle off the shelf at the drugstore and there's my potassium. Is that, are there certain supplements that are going to be causing issues?
Well, with CKD, it again really depends on the stage and the individual person's labs, and even how their metabolism is working and taking care of these things. There's renal multivitamins, and then there's over-the-counter standard multivitamins. But the reason they have renal multivitamins is because certain nutrients like potassium, like phosphorus, like the fat-soluble vitamins, those types of things are not going to be required the same way that a regular multivitamin would say that they're required, because of the way the kidney is managing or not managing them. So I do think that there can be a great space to use supplements in certain situations. I do micronutrient testing for my private clients, and we look specifically at certain metabolics. We look at their micronutrients, their B vitamins, their fat-soluble vitamins, omegas, things like that, to see, first of all, how can we get this incorporated into the diet more? Or is there a metabolic issue going on that's just preventing them from being utilized in the first place? Because what's the point of adding a supplement if the body's not going to be able to utilize it? So that's kind of what we look at in general. But potassium supplements specifically, I would only be looking at those in certain extreme malnutrition cases, and definitely coming from the doctor or at least in discussion with the doctor, because there's so many ways we can get potassium into the diet, and the supplement is not going to be the same kind of benefit and nutrition that we would get, of course, from food.
Right.
And I think almost every dietitian is going to say food first and how can we get more on the plate. So that's the way I see it.
And
Awesome.
what about people who are like self-prescribing, or like they don't have any kidney issues and they think, okay, I want to prevent, going down that road. I'll start taking supplements so that I can, is there anything that's going to sort of lead in that direction, or that they should be watching out for? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I actually have had quite a few patients come to me, and they would maybe start with supplements. Like another really big supplement that people I feel like take quite often are like fiber supplements. And that is something that really, if you're getting the fruits and vegetables daily, or even a couple days, like across a week, that you should be getting, you don't need those kinds of supplements. I have patients, again, they were taking a fiber supplement, and then we switched over, got them into eating the right amount of nutrients, and their fiber intake is like 50 to 60 grams per day, like double what the recommendation is.
Wow, that is a lot.
Yeah. But they're doing so well. And I tell you, I know, I think Melanie mentioned, we talk about poop, right? So they talk about just their gut being so different when they're getting that nutrition in. And it's not the same as taking just that fiber supplement. It's a very, very different type of experience that your body gets, and the reaction that your body gets when you're having the food instead of the supplements. And I think another thing with supplements, they can kind of stack. Like there's not like one quote unquote perfect supplement. It's always like, well, if you take this, then you should take this. And then if you take this, then you should take this. And it's always like the next thing you have to add on. And that's just, to me, that's just an indication like maybe the supplement isn't the answer, because it's only a Band-Aid kind of a fix, if that.
Yeah. That's kind of what I figured. Like bottom line is get your nutrients through food in most cases, right? Unless there's specific requirements.
Yep, exactly.
Wow,
Perfect.
That's awesome. Oh my gosh. Lots of great information. And obviously you know how to help people, because I love to hear the transitions they're making and the transformation in their diet. And just like doubling their fiber is like, that's a hard thing to do for a lot of people, because, it's standard that the North American diet, there's a deficiency of fiber. Like just most people are not getting enough fiber in there. And it's usually fruits and vegetables and whole grains and nuts and seeds. So that's, I love to hear that. Like obviously what you're doing, it's helping people. It's really affecting their nutrition and overall health for prevention. And I love that. Wow, you've been so, I love all your descriptions and all the information that you've offered. I had another question, just so we ask all of our guests on the interview. And partly we're developing a recipe book with my wife, the dietitian, best recipes. And a lot of our guests have provided some ideas of different recipes they like. And I was just wondering, if you're going to go to a potluck, what dish would you bring?
Yeah, I can't not bring cilantro beans. This is a recipe that my mom taught me. But I think just offering beans at a potluck, it's like so many people can enjoy them. And this recipe in particular, you use like a whole like bunch or 2 bunches of cilantro, and then you use tomatoes and onion and garlic and canned beans, which is fantastic because they're so affordable and just easy to throw together. And it just has so many good flavors and spices to it. And I should have eaten lunch before this podcast, because now I need to go make some cilantro beans.
That's right.
Totally. Are they like the white kidney beans or cannelloni, or what kind of beans?
Pinto beans.
Nice.
Pinto.
Oh,
Pinto beans. Some of them use the ranch pinto beans, but honestly, just pinto beans, a lot of vegetables, and then spices. And sometimes I'll add a jalapeno in there too, if I know the group that'll be eating it.
That's awesome.
My
I love
group
it.
would be
Oh my
eating
God.
that.
Yeah. Oh, it's so good.
Awesome.
Mhm.
And
So
beans are pretty good for you, right? I've heard
Oh,
that.
they're fantastic. Yeah, there's something I think that's so underutilized. And we talk about like a plant-based diet. It's beans are such an easy swap for like a meat alternative. It just really, really helps. And it gives you that satisfaction and those extra flavors and the fiber we talk. Oh, I
I
think,
was
yeah,
gonna say,
let's do a different topic or a different podcast about beans.
yeah,
I
that's
know, I
right.
know. Yeah. And they're economical, like they're affordable, and they're
Yeah.
just like so
Yeah.
versatile. There's like so many different recipes for beans, and you can make them like in yours. Is that a cold salad or is it a warm dish?
It's warm. Yeah. So
Oh,
I'll throw it
okay.
together like in the Instant Pot. I cook all the spices and the aromatics, and then I add the beans, and then you just let it sit. Like you just let it sit and stay warm. And like the longer, it's one of those things kind of like chili. Like the longer it sits together, the better it tastes.
Wow, I thought it was cold, but that sounds amazing. It would be good cold too. I've
It's
had salad, like a cold bean salad with similar kind of things in it, but warm would be really tasty.
it's really good.
There we
That
go. We're gonna
sounds
have to
so
go
good.
fire that up for lunch too, Sandra.
I was
That's
just gonna say we have an Instant Pot there. I think I bet Rob's gonna make that, and that would be like
Oh.
my pleasure for her to eat Rob's dinner.
there you go. Anytime. Yeah. Hey Jen, where can people get a hold of you? Do you want to just sort of shout out your places there, your social media and website and all that?
Sure. So the best place with the most information is our website, which is plantpoweredkidneys.com. And you can find us on Instagram at Plant Powered Kidneys. You can find us on Facebook at Plant Powered Kidneys. We even have a free and private Facebook group that you just search. You search Plant Powered Kidneys, and I think we have about 10,000 people in there right now. And it's all about other people with kidney disease who want to include more plants in their diet. And it's very positive, very uplifting. We really do take care of the people in that group to keep privacy, but also keep positivity in there as well. And that's another good place to find recipes because people will share food photos and recipes. So
Awesome.
those are probably the best places, I would say.
Yeah, that's quite a few options. So hopefully people will look into that because it sounds like there's a ton of really good information out there. So thank you for
YouTube.
that.
Did you say you had a YouTube channel?
I do have a little bit. I do more like guest appearances on YouTube. I have some YouTube videos. I've been meaning to get that picked back up, but time is just it's gone.
Totally.
It's always gone.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, you're keeping your blog going and you have clients and your courses and I've just joined your Facebook group just as a it's so awesome to hear what you do and the people you help. So
Yeah.
that's
good.
great.
Good. I'm glad. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And do you have any questions for us or Rob, any last thoughts?
No, I think that's good. That's given me a little bit to process, so I think I'm good for now. And we'll connect another time, I'm sure, when we have more questions.
Oh yeah, I'd love to. I know we talked a lot about potassium and sodium today, and we didn't even touch on protein. There's so many topics with CKD. It's so nuanced. There's so much behind it. So I would love to be back on and talk with you guys about another whole different thing.
I do have one question.
That sounds...
One quick question, Jen. What does the C stand for in CKD?
C stands for chronic kidney disease.
Okay.
And that is something, so this is chronic kidney disease is a lifelong diagnosis. There's no cure. There are treatments like dialysis. There's treatments like transplant and just being preventive. But once a person has CKD, that is a lifelong thing. So it's very important to be aware that if you do come across anything on the web, the interwebs, or on social that talks about a cure for kidney disease or fixing or entirely reversing, just be really, really careful with that.
Yeah, fair enough. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. It was a pleasure talking to you. And Sandra, anything else? Are you?
No, that's great. Jen, we'll definitely connect again and have you back on and talk about a different topic about kidney disease and protein maybe, or I don't know, something else. But yeah, that sounds awesome. And good luck in your move.
Sandra. Thank you, Bob. My goodness. Thanks.
At least it's kind of nice that you have everything online so you can kind of work from anywhere just through your computer and helping people and helping your team, that you have all these dietitians that are helping people out that work with you. That's great. I think that's so,
yes.
It's inspiring to hear.
I'm very fortunate to do this and to get the stories and the successes that we hear from people every day. It's just so, I mean, I'm obviously quite a talker, but when I hear these success stories, it really just makes me speechless, and like my heart explodes from joy. And it is just such a privilege to be a part of somebody's journey when they're going through CKD, because it's a big deal and it's not something to take lightly. And I'm just always so honored to be a part of this community.
Oh, I see that. I think you are changing the world. I think what you're doing to help people is amazing. And we need more and more people like you out there that can help people anywhere. And yeah, your knowledge is so, you have such a good foundation of information. And this was so enlightening. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you both for having me. I truly appreciate it.
You're welcome, Jen.
Our pleasure. Our pleasure. So yeah, enjoy the rest of your day and talk to you again.
Yes, absolutely. You too.
Take care.
Thanks. Awesome. Her story is so interesting, eh?
Yeah, there's so much, like once again, I'm just floored by how much information is out there that people probably don't really know much about, and they're getting their information online or through YouTube or whatever. And yeah.
Yeah, I encourage people to look up Jen Hernandez, plant-powered kidneys, and see all the resources that she has. She's got a team of dietitians that are supporting patients. And it's just so cool that she has set up her remote practice because she kept moving quite frequently with her husband being in the military. So I just think her story is amazing, and the support she offers people with kidney disease and to help prevent kidney disease, and all the information we discussed today on the different gourmet salts and salt substitutes. It was a really enlightening discussion.
Yeah. What did she say? 10,000 people in her Facebook group? I'm pretty sure that's what she said. I'm like, wow. Yeah, that's impressive. So obviously there's a demand for this kind of information, and she's your go-to for that.
Yeah, listeners can check out Plant Powered Kidneys for good information on what Jen has to offer.
Awesome. That's great. And yeah, all her links we'll put in the show notes. And yeah, be sure to check out what she's been talking about. There's lots of information out there.
That was fun.
Absolutely. And you can check out our stuff as well. We're on YouTube and Instagram and Facebook, and we've always got new stuff coming up on the blog at mywifethedietitian.com. If you have questions or ideas or things you'd like us to talk about on this show, on the podcast here, you can send us an email at mywifetherd@gmail.com. We love hearing your comments and questions and all those sorts of things. So don't be shy. Just, feel free to reach out. And don't forget to rate and review the show. That's always helpful for us as well. So in the meantime, have a great week, everyone. We'll be back on Wednesday with Nutrition Nuggets, and then back again next Monday with a full episode. All right. Take care.
Thanks, Rob.
Thanks for joining us today on My Wife the Dietitian. If you like what you heard, don't be shy. Leave us a comment or review, and be sure to share our podcast with your friends. If you'd like to hear more, hit that subscribe button. You can also follow us on our social media pages for updates, episode trailers, and other odds and ends. For more info and links on what we discussed on today's episode, check the show notes. We'll be back next week with another informative and fun-filled episode.